if you're watching this live, then and you're on Facebook, please put comments or questions in the chat. I will read them to Alex. I'm gonna.
We have a person.
Bernadette. I'm gonna do an admit for Bernadette.
So I thought we would give like people a good like at least 3 minutes to trickle in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Since we are on Facebook Live, though, do you want to give a quick introduction on what we're doing here, and then a
Yeah.
quick introduction on who you are?
Yeah. So this year for the MTUG Art Show, since it's virtual, I thought that I would host a little Q&A section on like on if people are interested in being in the MTUG Art Show this year and in future years, and if they had any like questions about entering the MTUG Art Show, but also just kind of a general, I wanted to talk about my own experiences as a professional artist over the last 12 years and things that I've learned and hopefully pass on some words of wisdom to other artists who are just starting out, and maybe even, artists who have been painting for a while. There are people in my life that were definitely very helpful and kind and really like gave me the push and the advice whenever I was just starting out. And so I like to try to pay that forward to the people, to the artists that are in my life. So that's kind of what this is about, is just kind of a general informational, hey, you think you want to be an artist? So then a little bit about me. My name is Alex Johnmeyer, and I've been a professional artist for 12 years, but I've been painting and drawing pretty much my entire life, like since I was a child. I started working in nonprofit about 11 years ago. I was with an organization called My St. Louis Art, which is where I learned a lot. I was a curator, an art installation manager, and the volunteer coordinator, and I served on their board of directors. And my time with My St. Louis Art really taught me a lot. So then whenever I met Sayer and we were forming MTUG, I already knew about Robert's rules, and my time with MySlart, then I took what I learned about being a curator and an art installation manager and said to Sayer, hey, we should make an LGBT art show. And so in 2012, he gave me like his blessing and I created MTUG's very first art show, which then became known as Transcending the Spectrum. So our very first year in 2012, we only had 12 or 13 artists. And then in 2019, our last public exhibition before COVID, we had 52 artists and 500 people attended. So the MTUG Art Show over the last 8 years has really grown and blossomed into this fully functional, thriving event that is really looked forward to by not only the LGBT community here in St. Louis, but also like the bigger St. Louis like art scene. It's become, very anticipated each year. So this is my last year as lead curator for the event. I made the decision that after 8 years, I'm going to be handing the job of lead curator over to Tucker Pierce. And this year, Tucker and I are working together, and I'm so excited to be working with her, and she's just lovely and a well-respected artist and curator in her own right. And I am completely confident that she will take the MTUG Art Show and into the future and make it something even bigger and better than it was these last 8 years with me. So that's about the MTUG Art Show. And then I would say about a little bit about my own like art career. I'm a painter. This is my art studio. This is the current commission that I'm working on. So I've been painting, like I said, pretty much all of my life, but I've been a professional, like as in doing art as my job now for the last 12 years. And I currently have representation at a gallery down on Del Mar called Artisans in the Loop. And I'm so excited and thankful to be in Wendy's gallery. She's just lovely. And it's an honor to be in a gallery where the owner not only supports my trans identity, but uses my pronouns and like respects and supports me. I just adore her. So yeah, like I think that's a little bit of a good intro on everything.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. We have a few people in the chat. If you are in the chat and have questions for Alex, please feel free to post them. There is a link as well in the chat that will let you join the Zoom meeting so you can ask your questions directly. Brenda Cross messaged to let you know that I don't want to assume pronouns. I'm just going to use they, them for everyone, that they love following your work, Alex.
Aw, thanks. So we have more than a couple humans now. I can't see who's on Facebook Live, so I have no idea how many people are actually watching.
That's why you got me here. And again, for anybody who's jumping in late, I am sorry for the confusion on where this was going to be. There was a little bit of technical difficulties a little bit ahead of time. So Alex, I have a couple of questions that I had for you.
Okay.
So first question, as a new artist, I kind of tend to err on the side of caution, err on the side of I don't think my work is good enough to be in a gallery presentation alongside, a lot of really illustrious artists that kind of show up to these. So how do you decide that your work, how would you judge that a piece is good enough to be a part of the Transcending the Spectrum conference? And how do you decide which pieces you would want to exhibit? What makes your decision on what is best for the show?
Well, the good thing about Transcending the Spectrum is that for the last 8 years, and now Tucker and I, we definitely want artists, LGBT artists of all levels and disciplines and media to feel safe and supported to submit their work. So whether you've never been in an art show before, that's exactly why Transcending the Spectrum is a good place to start, is that as long as you've created something that is visual, whether that's digital art, painting, drawing, photography, sculpture, collage, pour painting, as long as it's something that someone else can look at with their eyes and enjoy, it's art. And so the MTUG Art Show is the best place to start. I would say kind of some basics for entering the MTUG Art Show, and honestly, all gallery and exhibitions. Make sure that your piece is properly wired. Go on the Google and say, how to put a wire on the back of my piece. And there are YouTube videos and all kinds of WikiHows, because hanging your work on a sawtooth hanger is not great. They will fall off the wall and also shift around and not stay straight. And then also making sure that your work is in a frame, or if you're painting on canvas, to have the sides of your canvas painted. It doesn't necessarily need to be like painted the same as the front, but like, for example, paint the sides of your canvas black or white or some other complementary color. Like if most of your painting is blue, then have the sides of your canvas painted like a lovely blue that kind of matches. So like, as for whether or not someone's work is good enough to be in the MTUG Art Show, the best place to start is by putting one foot in front of the other and submitting your work. You'll never know if you're good enough if you don't try. And once upon a time, I wasn't sure that my work was good enough to be in a show for the very first time. And so I submitted and I was accepted. But I'm certainly, in the last 12 years, I am not accepted to every single show I've ever submitted to. And rejection is hard, but also that is another good thing about the MTUG Art Show, is that pretty much we will accept everyone's work. And like, you know, we do want you to be able to put your best your best work forward. And so we'll work with you to like, you know, make sure like your work is wired, your work is framed, and that it's like, you know, ready to be hanging on a gallery wall. How was that for an answer?
I think that was fantastic. I appreciate the insight. Another question came in. Brenda Cross asking for advice on getting gallery representation.
So that's a great question to lead into the presentation that I've prepared. I talk a little bit about like my own process and my own inspirations, and then the end of the presentation, I would say it's about 10 minutes, is talking about working with galleries and entering juried exhibitions and getting gallery representation. So I'm going to start some screen share and we're going to do that if that's cool with everybody else.
Absolutely. Take it away.
Cool. All right. Doing this. Here we go. Voila. So my name is Alex Johnmeyer. I am an artist working in watercolor and acrylic now for the last 12 years professionally. My style is considered realism, but I definitely did not start out that way. And so if you're interested in learning more about my work, you can find me on my website, my Facebook, and my Instagram. So let's get started. This is me in my art studio. I didn't always have an art studio. Once upon a time, I started at the kitchen table and at the dining room table making a mess. And every time we would have friends over or someone for dinner, I would have to pick everything back up. And so I moved from the dining room into a guest room. And then 8 years ago, I was able to take what was our garage and turn that into a proper studio. And I'm so thankful to have my own space with a door that is separate from where my husband and child live. So I can make a mess and be loud and have Zoom calls. So yeah, no, having my own space is hashtag a blessing. So I wanted to talk a little bit. One of the biggest questions that I get is what inspires you, and what inspires you to keep painting? What inspires you to keep going? What inspires you to create? And for me, for those of you who don't know me, I have quite a few health issues, and painting is definitely a form of therapy for me and a form of self-expression. I create to share my life experiences with the people around me. I want to capture a moment in my life and reinterpret it as a painting so that other people can join me in those moments. And so my favorite quote is by Chuck Close. It goes, "Inspiration is for amateurs. The rest of us just show up and get to work." And what that means is that not every day do I feel like painting, and not every day do I feel well enough to paint. And I don't paint every day, certainly. I'm far too busy to have time to paint every day. But my point is, sometimes inspiration doesn't happen. And I just make the decision to get to work, to pick up the paintbrush or the pencil and keep on working. There's a famous art quote that says, you know, out of every 100 paintings, maybe 25 of those will be considered true masterpieces. And it's not for, you know, you to decide where the successes and the failures were. That if you create enough work, there will be true artistry found, and to just keep on creating and keep on working. And I absolutely believe in that. Not every painting or project that I've made over the last 25 years has been amazing and effortless. There have been paintings where it is hard work, and it's not always fun, but it's been worth it for me. And whenever I take that painting off the easel and it's done and it touches other people and other people are moved by my work, then it feels worth it. That sense of accomplishment to say, I made this. And it's actually, every time I start a new painting, I'm always scared every time I start a new painting that like somehow miraculous, like over the course of like the night, I've somehow forgotten how to paint. And I'm like, oh God, how do I do this again? I don't, can I do this? And then it all just, it's like riding a bike and it all just comes back. So the reason that Chuck Close inspires me was because in 1988, he had a seizure. And that seizure was caused by a spinal artery collapse, and it left him paralyzed from the neck down. And before this seizure, he created incredibly photorealistic, large-scale paintings. There's actually one at the St. Louis Art Museum, but you can find his paintings in almost every gallery and museum all over the United States and the world, actually. And so this is a photograph of Chuck Close in his gallery before the accident. That's a painting with a paintbrush and an airbrush for some parts of it. But after his accident, the event, as he calls it, he had to change his approach. And he created a scaffolding system that allowed him to work from his wheelchair, and he actually taped his paintbrush to his hand and he evolved to working to what he refers to as hot dogs and donuts. And his portraits became a grid of abstract shapes, but then whenever you bring all of those shapes together, and take a step back, you can see the portrait take shape. And the reason this inspires me is, like I mentioned earlier, despite the challenges I have in my life, the challenges that any of us have in our life, whether that be physical or emotional or mental or just even finding the time, Chuck Close reminds me to just keep swimming. So he's my favorite artist, and I am continually pushing myself to work as hard as he does. So a little bit about me. When I started my career, if you will, 12 years ago, I was creating, I would call my work expressionism, textural expressionism. I was using different kinds of texture paste, modeling paste, heavy gloss gel, and I would put them, here you can see, in a piping bag. I worked as a cake decorator in college. I would write happy birthday and use a spatula and put icing on a cake. And I was like, can I take those same techniques and methods and apply them to my paintings? And so I did a lot of work and a lot of research. And so that's what I started to do. Liquitex and Golden both make a lot of really fun and different texture media. So this was a commission for this lovely couple, it was a wedding gift that they hung in the library of their home. And so this is texture media. I used a piping bag and a spatula. And so this is what my early work in my career looked like. And I was getting commissions and I was getting into shows and things were going really well. But then in 2013, I started my company in 2009, but in 2013, I decided to take my art in a different direction. This is another example of my textural paintings. You can see the veins of the leaf. I still love this painting, but it's very different than the work that I've been putting out for the last 8 years. So I'm a photographer. And so in 2013, I decided to start taking my photographs and turning them into paintings. And that was obviously a very good decision for my career. So this is one of my better known paintings. So this is the original photograph that I took. And then I turned it into a pencil sketch. So in real life, this measured 4 feet wide, 4 feet on canvas. And so then I started coming in with the acrylic. This is how big it is in my art studio. And so this is a good example. Here you can see the gloss super heavy gel and the piping bag and the spatula. And that's how I applied texture to the canvas. And so that's what I've been doing now for the last 8 years. Not all of my paintings are textured, but I really enjoy incorporating three-dimensional textures to my paintings, both acrylic and watercolor paintings. So here you can see everywhere that the gold is on those keys is textured. It was about this, there we go, about 1/2 inch to 1 inch high off of the height of the canvas. And then I start applying the paint. And the goal is that by the time I'm done with the painting, you can't tell where the texture was. And so there's the finished piece. It's still one of my favorite paintings that I've done. So then I wanted to show you another example. Oh, well, this is me working on it. For the last 8 years, I've been in a local charity event called Wall Ball, which raises money for a nonprofit called ArtScope, which provides basically camps and art classes for children. So it's a children's arts education program. And it's one of the biggest art parties that occurs every year in St. Louis. And it's a lot of fun. So another example of my textured work. So here's the black and white. This is just ink on canvas. And then I started adding the texture. And I know it's kind of hard to tell from looking at this where the texture is, but there's a lot of it, which means I did a good job because it means you really can't see it in the photographs. But then I came in, I figured out how to make textured watercolor paintings. So this is a textured watercolor painting that I did in 2019 for Wall Wall. And there's the finished piece. And then this is a photograph I took of crayons, and I interpreted it as a watercolor painting. This is definitely one of my personal favorites of my paintings, and one of my best sellers in my Etsy shop. So that's the finished piece. I have gallery representation, like I mentioned before, at Artisans in the Loop on Del Mar. And I just love Wendy. She's amazing and lovely and supportive and uses my pronouns. And then this is my last solo show in 2019, October. It was not, and then the COVID happened. So that's a little bit about me and my career and what I do as an artist. And so now we get to the question. I believe their name was Brenda, or what was it, Larissa?
It was Brenda.
Okay, great. So I made a list here of St. Louis galleries and events. So if there was someone who was wanting to show their work in a gallery who's never showed their work before, the MTUG Art Show is honestly, in my opinion, and not just because I'm the curator, the easiest and least scariest place to start. We are very understanding and kind and patient and really ready to work with you and teach you and make it the least intimidating exhibition that you could possibly ever be in. So once you've been, in the MTUG Art Show and you think you're ready to venture out into the real world, if you will, the very first art gallery in St. Louis that I would recommend any new artist to start is Soulard Art Gallery. And so I've put these in order. And so if you want to just take a screenshot of this, that would probably be the easiest way. I've put these in order of kind of least scary to most scary. And by scary, I mean just easiest to get into, and then takes a little more work and takes a little more work. And for example, on the far inside, Hauska Gallery in the Central West End, you definitely need to be on your A game because they want the best. They want perfection. And, you know, just being honest. So the first two galleries that I would submit to would be Soulard Art Gallery and Framations. Framations is down in St. Charles on Main Street, and both Soulard Art Gallery and Framations Gallery are very sweet, very lovely, very friendly. My very first exhibition that I ever entered in and that I ever showed in was at Soulard Art Gallery. And I have friends who are still there, and they offer gallery representation also. So once you've been in a show there, you can submit to be one of their resident artists. You will have to be approved by all the other residents in the gallery because it is a co-op. The gallery is run by the resident artists. And so then Framations is lovely. They do juried exhibitions, I think every 6 weeks, and they're very friendly. Then I would put Art St. Louis, the St. Louis Artists Guild, and Webster Arts, and the Foundry Art Center. I would put them all on the same level. You know, they expect professional work. I have been accepted and rejected, and don't take rejection too hard, because most of the time rejection is all about what the curator for that specific show is looking for, not necessarily a reflection of what you have submitted or your work. You know, I've been rejected just as many times as I've been accepted. So, you know, those first couple of rejections, they hit hard, but you just need to keep on trying. And something that I've learned, and something that I tell new artists, is there's really no such thing as bad art. It's really that maybe your art isn't for that particular person or gallery or exhibition. Perhaps you just haven't found your audience yet. And, you know, there's something to be learned from, you know, constructive criticism and rejection. And it certainly has helped me and pushed me to, you know, learn what I can do and how I can improve. So if you're looking for gallery representation, and what that means is that you are a resident artist in this gallery. So juried exhibitions, that means that it's like a show. It's usually up for a week or a month, maybe 6 weeks. And you have to submit. There's usually a submission fee. But then gallery representation means that your artwork is in the gallery, usually for sometimes for a month, sometimes for a 6-month contract, sometimes for a year contract, if you're lucky, for a continuing, you know, relationship with the gallery owner. So there are galleries where you pay the owner of the gallery to have your work hanging on their wall. And then, so you pay them a wall fee, and then you, in addition to that, if you sell any artwork at their gallery, they also take a cut or a commission. And then there are other galleries where you don't pay a wall fee and the gallery owner takes a higher cut. So, for example, at Soulard Art Gallery, you can rent a room, and then they only take, I think, a 20% commission. And then at Artisans in the Loop, which is where I am, though, I don't pay to have my work on the wall there, but whenever I sell my work there, the owner takes 50% of the price. And I prefer that way of doing things, because then if there's a month where I didn't sell very much, I don't lose money. But it is a personal decision. And I think the most important thing when choosing a gallery is that you like the owner, and you have a good relationship with the owner, that you can communicate with the owner, and that you feel the gallery is well lit and clean and in a good part of town where there'll be foot traffic. And then for those of us who are LGBT, you know, how do you feel that you as a queer or trans artist will be received? I wish that I could say every gallery I've worked with here in St. Louis has been lovely and open-minded, but that's not the case. So, you know, I have shown at Soulard Art Gallery and Green Door and Stone Soup and Artisans in the Loop and Hauska. So, you know, everyone, for the most part, everyone is very sweet and friendly and kind. And so then lastly, I wanted to talk about local art events. Court is run by Maxi Glamour. It used to take place at the Crack Fox. I don't know if that will be the case after COVID, hopefully, because I love Carrie, the owner of the Crack Fox. Let Them Eat Art takes place in July in downtown Maplewood. Art of Pause is a charity event for Vivint Health, which raises money for individuals living with HIV and AIDS. And so it raises money to let individuals with HIV and AIDS be able to afford to keep their pets as support animals while they are undergoing treatment. And, you know, it helps cover the costs of food and vet bills, anything that that person may need so that they can afford to keep their babies, their pets. Wall Ball is another charity event for Artscope that I mentioned earlier. If you're looking for a art fair instead of a gallery, the Schlafly Art Fair is, in my opinion, the easiest place to start if you're interested in being in an art fair. It's very well attended, and you don't necessarily need a booth, but it's preferable that you have a booth. Also, similarly, Let Them Eat Art. If you don't have a booth, that's a great event because they'll put you in one of the local businesses in downtown Maplewood. So you can just show up with like a card table and your prints or your paintings or whatever it is that you make, and sell your stuff. And you get to keep 100% of everything you sell at Let Them Eat Art. And then the last event that I actually got my start and is very well attended is called Naughty Gras. It is a erotic art show, but very well attended and very trans and queer inclusive. It's a lot of fun. So that's a little bit of a rundown on the gallery scene and the basics of like the St. Louis art events. There are so many more places and opportunities to show art, but I just kind of wanted to give kind of like a little taste of some things here. So that's everything that I have for my pre-scheduled. So I'm going to stop the screen share here.
Okay, I got one more comment from Brenda, and then I want to move on to a couple of other questions that have popped in, one from Jessica, one from Anna. Brenda has messaged, that's awesome. I just had my work at Art St. Louis and just found out that I got into an exhibit at the Soulard Art Gallery.
Congratulations, that's amazing. You're doing things.
All right, going on, let's go with Jessica's question. They asked, any ideas about three-dimensional woodwork that can't really be hung on a wall? I would assume that this is related to having it in a physical art show, such as the standard MTUG art shows that we've had, but also potentially, I don't know, take that one away, Alex. You got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, woodworking, I mean, honestly, as long as you can put it on a pedestal, anything goes, in my opinion. I mean, sculpture and woodworking is still art. It's still a form of creation. So, you know, I say totally submit it. And most galleries are, you know, supportive and interested in woodworking. So I would be curious to know what kind of woodworking, like, are we talking turning bowls or are we talking sculptures, or I would just be curious, but yeah, submit, do it.
Cool. Anna is asking a question, and I'm not familiar with this. Would your art be called relief sculpture?
Would my personal work be considered relief? I don't think so. Maybe I don't know what relief means. Let's Google it. Relief sculpture. Well, it's a painting, so I don't think that makes it a sculpture.
But
Let's.
if you're, so relief sculpture, that's a complex art form that takes two-dimensional pictorial arts and three-dimensional and combines it with three-dimensional sculptural arts. So some of the textured work that might be related to that.
Sculptural technique where sculpted elements remain attached to a solid background of the same material. Then no, my work is not relief because I am using texture media and applying it to either wood panel or canvas. So technically my work would not qualify as relief. It would be, I think, mixed media sculptural paintings, three-dimensional paintings.
Okay, another question came in. I do not want to mess up this individual's name because they did supply a separate name. Um, they ask advice/resources on photographing art for submissions.
Oh, that's a good question. Photographing your work is a thing. So if you're just starting out, most all of us have a camera on our phone, and these days you can take really, really good pictures just on your phone camera. When I'm feeling lazy, sometimes I definitely do that just for like a Facebook post. So what I would recommend is if it's a two-dimensional object, like as in a photograph, like a drawing, a painting, tape it or against a white wall. Lighting is very important. So you don't want it to be yellow lighting like an incandescent. You might need to go outside to get proper daylight. Daylight is the best lighting. So you want your I assume most everyone knows how to use the crop feature on their phone's camera. So you want your art to be square. You don't want it to be skewed in any direction. So you don't want it to be, too much tilting, too much back. You want to try to have your image be well lit, evenly lit, and square. And then once you've taken a good photo, go into your phone and play with the exposure, play with the saturation, take a look at what you have created and your photo of it and try to make them match. And then crop out the wall so that the only thing that is submitted is the artwork itself. We don't want to see your wood paneling or your couch.
You don't want to see my 70s basement?
I don't. So often, taking your work outside and just leaning it against like your car, and then getting a good square picture of it. Daylight is really like important. Um, I would definitely say.
Would you recommend doing any kind of photoshopping to improve those angles?
Yes. I mean, photoshopping as in
As
try.
in as in cropping the image, I think.
Yes, yes. Yeah. And like, for example, my own work, you know, lighting is tricky. And so, I will take a perfectly square photo, but I'll still need to go in and like increase the saturation a little bit, increase the contrast. There, it's almost impossible to take a photo that is 100% representative of what your artwork looks like. It will almost always need some amount of photoshopping. I mean, which on an iPhone, I mean, like if you know how to take a picture and edit it to put on Instagram, you can edit your artwork to submit to a gallery.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Uh, Kelly is has a comment. I really love listening to the talk and how amazingly encouraging you are to me as a wannabe artist. I got up the courage to try to get into wall ball this year. I didn't, but I will try again. I didn't. Still awesome. I didn't know how much about the I didn't know much about the Spectrum art show, but I will definitely try and apply.
Fantastic. Oh, good luck on Wall Ball. This year they had a lot of submissions. The director, her name is Emily Coring, and she is lovely. I've been a part of Wall Ball now for 8 years, and I'm so thankful. I think this was my 9th year. So no, keep trying. This year they did have a lot of submissions, and they only have, they usually only accept about 40 artists, but almost every year there are artists who, for whatever reason, they decide that they need to take a break and they step back from Wall Ball. And so artists step back and artists come forward. So try again next year. Yeah, good luck. Seriously, like that's exciting.
Anna, kind of coming back in with a comment about the relief sculpture. That comments looks like relief sculpture, but modern with color and material other than marble.
Yes.
Which I feel does describe some of your work that I've seen.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Brenda, Alex, do you use an isolation coat and or varnish on your acrylic paintings? And I think just as a general expansion of that, how would you describe, what is your approach for finishing a painting to keep it preserved so like it doesn't get scratched as easily? There isn't going to be any paint chips, isn't going to be any fading if it gets any sunlight, that kind of stuff.
Yes. So for watercolor and oil pastels, it is recommended to put them under glass. For graphite and acrylic, it's recommended that you apply some kind of varnish. Oils don't necessarily need varnish, but a lot of artists do like to put a varnish coat on top. So what I do personally, I don't like, now I'm gonna tell you a secret, I don't like paying for framing because framing is expensive. And I'm a starving, okay, not starving, but I'm an artist. And artists, I mean, some artists maybe have a lot of money, but most artists are trying to be thrifty when it comes to supplies. So what I like to do is whenever I make a watercolor painting is I use a matte medium and I apply my watercolor painting to wood panel, and then I use a brayer and push out all the air bubbles, and then I put weights on the back side of it to like, so that watercolor painting and that wood panel, they are smushed up together and they are friends for life. And so I let that cure for like at least 2 days, and it's like they are on there forever. And then I come in and apply a spray varnish, a matte spray varnish on top of it. So that will set the watercolor painting. And then so I do 2 coats of that spray varnish. And then if I want the painting to be shiny or if I want it to be matte, I'll use a gloss, either a spray or a gloss medium, like a gloss varnish on top. But if I want it to be a matte finish, there's a product I really love, Dorland's Wax. It's a wax medium, and so it gives a nice matte finish, so you don't get any reflections. And I use Dorland's Wax on almost everything. But for my acrylic paintings, I don't do an isolation coat. I just start painting right on the canvas. If it's a good quality canvas, you shouldn't need to gesso it. But if you're like going to Michael's and like getting maybe like the student grade, it would serve you well to maybe put on a coat of gesso to help your paintbrush glide better across that canvas. So I just, I get maybe the better brand from Art Mart or Blick, and I just start painting right on there. I usually need 2 or 3 coats of acrylic paint for it to look like saturated and a good quality. And so then after I'm done with an acrylic painting, I'll do that first coat of a spray varnish. I really like, my favorite brand is, well, I'm just gonna go grab it. My favorite brand is UV archival quality Krylon, and this is the gloss, but they also make a matte finish. So I slap this on top of literally everything I make. I put at least 2 coats of this on my watercolor paintings and on top of my acrylic paintings. And then once that has cured, then I'll come back with like a UV protectant varnish. And that's when I can choose if I want the painting to be a matte finish or a high gloss finish. Because if, we work on these paintings for hours, months, years. And so you don't want fading and you don't want cracking. You want something that's going to stand the test of time.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Alex. I'm
Well,
having some slight connection issues on my end.
I,
Um, that's the magic of Zoom.
yeah,
We're all tired of Zoom at this point.
all I want to do is rub a zoom, zoom, zoom in the boom, boom. Okay, sorry.
All right, another question coming in from Dylan, and this actually kind of also is a part of a question that I had when we were talking about canvases. Do you ever make your own canvases? Do you recommend that as a cheaper alternative to getting canvases? Like I know when I go to Michael's, I see they have like a very simple system of 1, 2, and 3 tiers.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm cheap. I buy the first tier because I'm not putting my stuff in a gallery. But
So,
so what type of wood would you use for making your own canvas frame? And
so
any thoughts on the process?
there is nothing worse than a poorly made canvas. I would recommend almost, unless you went to high school and college and took a class on how to properly make your own canvas and how to stretch canvas, I would not recommend it. I know how, and it's hard. It's tricky. I'm just being honest. Most galleries prefer at least a 7/8 profile, which is about an inch profile. Um, if you're wanting to create professional work, I would avoid the student grade, which is a 1/4 or a 1/2 inch thick. Professional work is usually at least an inch, if not an inch and a half thick on the profile of the canvas. So if you feel completely confident, like it's really worth it to you want to save some money and do it yourself, I applaud you. But a painting that is a canvas that is not very well stretched and very well secured will bounce and wobble. And it's not great. It's not a good look. So if you are wanting to make your own canvas, and I have done it, especially whenever I am selling giclée reproductions of my paintings, I will build my own canvases because it's significantly cheaper. Blick, honestly, and ArtMart, they sell like very affordable pre-made canvas bars. So you just go in there and like pick out what size you want, and the corners are such that you can pop it together and make whatever size you want, and then just staple everything in place. And you need the proper tools to stretch that canvas. I honestly feel like properly stretching canvas is a 2-man job. It took me a good 3 or 4 months before I did anything as far as stretching a canvas that was respectable. Like I said, a sad, bouncy canvas is one of the worst things in the world.
All right, thank you. Bronson, hey friend, how do you go about shipping your work, especially the larger size canvases? I have a 4-foot tall piece I'm working on.
Oh, good Lord, you're a good man. Shipping. So, meaning shipping like a full-on painting is expensive. There's no other way to put it. The cheapest way to go about it would be to go to like Office Depot or even Best Buy and get a TV box, like the boxes that that flat screen TVs ship in, and lots of padding and But what I personally do is go to FedEx. FedEx has boxes specifically made for shipping artwork. And assuming that this is for a customer, you know, obviously the customer is going to be the one paying for the shipping. So if you can go to FedEx, bring in them your painting and get a quote. And most of the professional artists I know here in St. Louis all use FedEx, because what they do is basically they take a large piece of cardboard and there's like a saran wrap like pocket, and they put your painting in that pocket, and it prevents any possibility of your painting being knocked around or the edges being scarred. It basically puts your painting like in a gravity-free, like it's gonna take a nap now, and keeps it very safe. But for like smaller pieces, yeah, you could absolutely, like, you know, lots of, you know, wrapping. If I could say one thing though, if you are thinking about doing this yourself, do not put bubble wrap directly on the surface of any painting. What your first step should be is to wrap your painting in acid-free tissue paper, and then like lock acid-free tissue paper, because you don't want if your painting gets too warm, there will be a chemical reaction between the bubble wrap and your painting, and then you'll have tiny little bubble wrapped texture on the surface of your painting, and you do not want that. So acid-free tissue paper first, then your bubble wrap. And then I would create cardboard corner protectors and put those, and then tape your corner protectors to your bubble wrap, and then put the entire thing in the TV box. That's what I would do. But I mean, you will save some money over going to FedEx doing that. But a 4-foot painting, man, that is big. I wish you luck.
All right, another question. I'm just letting you know that we are coming up on 7:53 right now. I'm putting a final call for questions out.
And we were
And
going to go on this till 8:30, right?
As long as you want to.
Yeah.
I'm definitely good to keep going. I'm just, you know, being cognizant of time, and we had scheduled this. I thought it was an hour, but you know, I do have a couple of my own questions still I want to ask. But first, Charlie, how fancy has a question about framing. How fancy would you say frames need to be? I have very little money, but I want to submit to galleries.
I would say a basic frame. Like, you don't necessarily need a matte, but I will say that having your work, like for example, if we're talking about a watercolor, having a little bit of a matte showing does give it that finished look. But honestly, you can go to Michael's and get, you know, a very affordable frame. I would say simple is better. You know, you don't want anything too ornate with like leaves and things. What I would recommend is most important is that you have a non-glare glass. You don't want a highly reflective glass. That's going to be distracting to your work. But I would, if you're concerned about framing costs, I would look into, you know, putting your work on, applying your work to wood panel. That's what I do, and it saves me a lot of money. But, you know, I would say just keep your frame simple.
Okay. Dylan wanted to come back in and clarify the question. Alex, you said that you use a wood panel and securely adhere the canvas to it. Did I understand that correctly?
No. You would not apply a wood panel to a canvas. You paint on a canvas, like this is a canvas, like canvas has a profile all its own, and it has a wood frame all its own. So you would not apply a canvas to a wood panel. Here, I'm going to show you all what I mean. So this is a wood panel. Wood panel. Okay. So for example, I take a paper, I take a print, one of my prints, or a watercolor painting that I've done. And essentially with the modeling paste or the gloss gel, you apply the gloss gel or the paste to this, basically like glue. And then very quickly, you will be putting the artwork on the wood panel, and you would trim off your edges so that, you know, it looks nice and clean. And so then it looks like this. So this is just one of my prints applied to wood panel. So I trimmed the edges perfectly. And then I put the artwork on top of, I glue it, but it's not really glue, to the wood panel. And then I lay this down upside down and I put weights here. I honestly put like 50 pounds of weight on the backside of this, and I leave it like that for definitely at least 24 hours. And you just let them just sit there, and they're gonna sleep, they're gonna take a nap. And then you come back, and that's when you trim your sides, and it should the very first thing you do is spray your artwork. That's the very first thing you do before you apply it to the wood panel. There are Googles for this, trust me. Then that's whenever you varnish. You varnish your sides, you varnish the top, and you wire. Nice. Wiring is important. That's if you remember anything from today, wire your work.
You're only saying that because you've had to hang so many pieces from the last 7 art shows, and you've had to hang them, you know, with a very small skeleton crew.
Yes. Yeah. Next question.
Actually, I still wait. Oh, Brenda, asking, where do you get your prints done? I'd love to do prints in the future, but I have no clue where to start.
Yeah. So the 2 places that I go for affordable prints, I go to the Dunn department, which is located on Southampton. And they are lovely and very affordable. Depending on how big your order is, it takes them about a week, which isn't bad. I really like them for their paper prints. If I'm being completely honest, I don't use them for my larger pieces. If I have a customer who is wanting a giclée, which a giclée is means that it is actually a reproduction that is printed with acrylic paint. The Dunn department they are laser, like inkjet paintings. So for my giclée reproductions, which means that they look identical to the original paintings. For those, I use a local business. His name is Mark Florida. And he's lovely and uses my pronouns. And he's fantastic. And I cannot say enough good words about Mark. And he's fast and very affordable. He's just lovely. I'm going to give you his number because I know he would be super happy about me sharing his information.
This being public on the internet, maybe share that outside through a private message, or
he's got a website. It's on his website.
Okay.
So his number is 314-327-7794. And his email is markflorida, like the state, at sbcglobal.net. He's a lovely gentleman, and he does great work. He does also print on watercolor paper and canvas. He will stretch the canvas for you, but I prefer to stretch my own just to save myself a little bit of money. And so that's whenever I go over to Blick and buy the pre-made canvas stretcher bars and the staples, and I do it myself. But make sure that you get some practice because so you don't ruin a good giclée canvas.
I just learned how that word is pronounced.
Giclée?
Yeah, that's spelled Glicee, right?
Yes, yes.
I've been saying glycee.
I would also recommend Fine Art America for prints. I've used them a couple of times and they're good. They're good.
Brenda responds with, "Thank you for the local resources for prints, Alex. You are amazing." I'm inclined to agree. Um, all right, so one more question. This one's from me. How do you decide / evaluate what's a fair price for your art pieces?
Oh my God, that's a really good and complicated question. So early in my career, like when we're talking like 12 years ago, and I was excited to get $100 for something I drew or painted. So back then I charged by the hour. And so I started out allowing to pay myself $10 an hour. That was 12 years ago. So I would keep track of exactly how many hours I worked on a piece. And I did that for quite a few years. And, you know, I would give myself a raise every once in a while. I would raise my prices. And, you know, then I reached a point where I was paying myself, you know, regularly, and my customers were paying my prices. But it became a pain in my tuchus, to be honest, to keep track of all the hours. So for example, the painting that I've been working on here for the last year off and on, I honestly don't know how many hours I've put into that painting. I don't know. And so most professional artists that I know personally they charge by the size. So, you know, you would charge, for example, you know, so much for a 12-inch painting, so much for a 16-inch painting, so much for a 2-foot painting, etc. So for me personally, you know, I'm not willing to do a commission that is smaller than 12 by 16 inches. And so my starting price, I'm not willing to do a commission for less than $300. And if you are thinking about doing commissions, I would highly recommend that you always require a down payment of at least half of the price, or do an installment plan of, you know, they have to pay a quarter up front, a quarter at the, you know, and they have to pay a quarter of the price, you know, every so often. I just require that my customers pay half down before I'll even begin painting. So the question of how to price your work is really tricky and complicated. It depends on what you feel you're worth, what you feel the market is. I will say from experience that artwork here in St. Louis does not sell for as much as it would in Chicago or Kansas City. The art market here in St. Louis is not nearly as lucrative as it is in other states. A painting here, like for example, a 4-foot painting here that I would sell for $2,000 would easily sell for $4,000 in Georgia or Miami. So it's a really tricky question. You know, if you're not sure, shoot me an email. And also, the more, unfortunately, the truth is, the more well-known and established an artist is, the more they can charge. I'm getting more for my paintings now than I was 12 years ago, of course. So, you know, my first couple of paintings, I was charging around $100, $200, $300. So I don't really feel like I adequately answered your question because it's a really complicated question to answer.
Oh no, I think it's fair. I think it's interesting to see how your career has evolved and how your pricing structure has evolved. I mean, there is the old saying, an artist only makes money after they're dead, right?
No?
No, but you've heard, you know what I mean.
Yeah, I'm not
I didn't mean
Picasso.
that in a rude way or anything.
I'm not Picasso, I know.
Um, Kind of following up on that though, you mentioned that you do commissions. Do you ever work into your commissions the ability to also resell reproductions of that commission?
Yes. Every commission I do, I give the customer the option. I ask them for their permission to sell prints of their work. And no one, okay, one person told me they would rather me not sell prints of their work. So that is something that I take into consideration. It's just, especially if it's a commission that meant something to someone that's very emotional. It's absolutely reasonable for them to request that I not, sell prints of that image.
Fair. Um, Dylan responding, Alex, love you so much, friend, and your art. Thank you for all the resources. I missed the first part of this talk, and if this is available to rewatch, I definitely will. We will have this up on YouTube right after we are done here, and it'll be on Facebook for as long as the algorithm allows it to be found.
Will we have this on our YouTube also?
Yes, I'll have it up. I'm going to upload it as soon as we are done here, as soon as we stop recording.
Do we have any more questions?
I do not see any more questions in the chat. I have one more question for you. I'm going to turn my camera back on.
Oh,
Um, well, it's an audio-visual question.
okay.
I need to actually make sure that I'm being seen. I've got you pinned on my local version of this. Um, okay, so while we were talking, noticed I had a copy of your book from 2017. And I am super hyped to realize that I have a copy of your book. Um, and I was actually kind of wondering, because you are my favorite artist. I have the book. I have a couple of of prints,
You have
and
an
I have one of
original.
the
You have an
yes,
original.
that has a place of prominence in my living room, which currently lacks a couch or any kind of seating, but it has artwork, which is what we need in life. But I was wondering and about this, and you ever thought about doing another print run on a book?
Yeah.
Have you ever considered um, putting like one thing while you were showing off your slideshow, you were showing process pictures, and
Mhm.
I would freaking love to have process pictures in a book like this.
Yeah. So I've
Um,
I've self-published um 3 books. And that's kind of one of my personal goals is for my next book to be not self-published and actually like with an actual publisher and not just like, you know, one of my books, I think I used just Apple Books, like honestly. And then for that one, who did I use? Was it Mix? I think is yes, Mix.com is who I use to make those books. Um, so I am wanting to make a new book. My next book, I'm going to talk, I do want to talk more about like my process and some, work in progress shots, but I also want to include some of my own original poetry because a lot of my
ooh,
poem,
yes.
a lot of my paintings are from my own poetry. And I kind of want to tell the backstory because, as I mentioned earlier, all of my paintings are based on my own photography. So they are moments from my actual life. Like when I'm out and about in the world, I take a photo, and a lot of those photos eventually get made into my paintings. So yes, I do want to make another book, but when is a really good question.
I mean, I was just impressed that I found that in the I saw that over at the other side of my library here, and yeah, definitely would be interested in getting another book.
So do we have any more questions?
Um, Brenda would love to hear your process. I think the thing I'm struggling with is how to find my style. It looks like yours has evolved. Do you have
Oh
any
my gosh. Yes, it
question?
has. Yes, it has. My style has evolved significantly. And how are we doing on time? Yeah, we have time. Let's go for a little journey, shall we? Okay, we're going to do screen share again. So, okay, we're going to go out here and we're going to go out here. So you're going to the reality of my laptop here, Brenda. Me and you are going on a trip together. So this is my oldest painting. I made this when I was 17 years old. This was my very first acrylic painting. I'm not saying it's good. I'm saying we all start somewhere. And this is from art class when I was, I believe, 14 or 15 years old. Not bad for a kid. Not bad. This is when I made this was graphite in art class when I was 18 or 19 years old. This was a self-portrait I did also. Not great. I mean, those eyes are entirely too huge. So then I started moving more into what I would call was my first style, were these expressional watercolors. Not any, not at all like what I do now. This is what I would really call kind of the beginnings of what became my style. You can see the texture, but the realism, but it's kind of almost cartoonish also. This was my very first commission. That's my very first sale. I got $100 to do this god-awful Disney-inspired castle for this little girl's bedroom. And the mom, a Chesterfield mom, she was just pleased as punch about it. And I was excited to get money. So, you know, but you can see the similarity between this and the moon and the Disney castle. And then this is when I discovered working with texture media. This was my second commission. She was a horror fiction writer, and she wanted me to create an abstract that when she would walk into her office to write, she wanted to feel compelled and inspired to write about death and darkness. And she wanted me to create an abstract that reflected those feelings. And so I started playing around with Liquitex and Golden's different texture media. And I added in gravel and sand, and this opened a whole new world for me. This was my second textured painting. It was it's abstract, but if I walk you through it, it's two bodies laying face to face. And so this is the chest of one person, and this is the shoulder blade of the other person. So they're laying face to face, and this is the backside, the buttock of one person, and then up here, this is the hip of the other person. So it was supposed to be passionate and emotional and sexual. And I really started playing around with texture and expressionism. This was a commission. I used, this painting had actual sand from Iraq in the texture of the painting. And I actually used my fingers and dragged them through the texture of the painting. Here, I'll show you a kind of a work in progress. So this is the sketch, and then this is the texture media. I started applying it. You can see the grit of the sand and the texture. So my style has definitely evolved. This was a painting called All in Her Head. And it's supposed to be from the point of view that you are a child looking under their bed and coming face to face with the monster under their bed. So a lot of texture you can see here. I used the piping bag and created what was supposed to look like my daughter's Afghan that I crocheted for her when she was a baby, hanging over the edge of the mattress. And that is a real piece of wood and a real wood foot board, what's it called? Footing? Yes, there we go. That I used a chisel to make claw marks, and I painted in the shadows. This was my very first painting that was ever shown in a juried exhibition at Soulard Art Garden, or Soulard Art Gallery. So you can see here, this is incredibly different than my work now. Finding what feels good and what feels right to you as an artist, I feel like it's always an evolution to expression. And you know, what you're creating now might not be what you're creating someday. This wasn't a textured piece, but this was the beginnings of me taking my textural work and my realism work and putting them together. Yeah, and so then this is a good example. This is a painting I did. This is a self-portrait of me as a child, and one of my paintings that actually includes my original poetry on it. It's about my own dysphoria and how trans adults don't always get to have the childhood that they wish that they'd been able to have. Here, I'll show you one more before I stop the screen share and showing you my older work. So this was a fun idea I had. I did a doubled canvas. So this is the front side of the first canvas. And this painting was inspired by Edgar Allan Poe's Telltale Heart. So I drew out the floorboards and then I painted them. So that's canvas, that's acrylic on canvas with some texture media. So you can see that there's texture between the boards. And then I added the shadow work. And then to the back side, here I'm gonna go back. This is the back side of that canvas. So the front side is where that wood paneling, the flooring was. This is the back side of that canvas. So then what I did was I cut that flooring up and I attached a second canvas to the back side, to the brackets. And I started adding this texture and I created the telltale heart laying in the dirt, pounding under the floorboards. And this painting was in a show at Art St. Louis and I got a lot of attention for this painting and I had a lot of fun. I really like making paintings that like have like dirt and filth and decay and a lot of like gritty texture. That's my favorite.
Yeah, that is absolutely fantastic. How did you make I'm going to ask silly questions. How did you make the texture on the bottom again? It
In
looks
the
in the
dirt.
dirt. That looks like rock. There looks like some rocks and some slight gravel in there
Yeah.
almost.
So coarse pumice gel is very expensive. And so what I figured out is that if you use light modeling paste and then add Mod Podge to it to water it down, and then what I've learned is that there is, for people who you work in models like like toy train sets, there is a fake sand and like fake gravel. So it looks like sand and it looks like gravel, but it weighs nothing. I will take that product from the toy train section and I will mix that into the light modeling paste. You can use regular modeling paste, but it is a lot heavier and it will crack. So I make my own textures, honestly. So that's what that is light modeling paste with artificial sand and artificial gravel. I'll also use lightweight aquarium rocks and mix that in because aquarium rocks also does not weigh very much. And then what I've started doing in the last few years here, I'll show you a good example. The last few years, I've started using paper clay. This is a good example. So this is a painting I did of Lucky Charms. So this is the sketch. That's coarse pumice gel to look like the oat pieces of the Lucky Charms. And then this is gloss, I believe it's heavy gloss gel. Yeah, it like stays very looking like very plastic and like kind of foamy. And then I used a high gloss varnish to look like the milk. It was,
That
yeah,
that looks absolutely awesome.
it turned out really well. The president of Rankin Jordan's Children's Hospital actually bought this.
Oh, cool.
So
Yeah, it looks a lot like it's the product's actually called Sculpta Mold. It's one I used to use when I was building D&D terrain a couple of years ago.
yes,
And so like I'm familiar with a lot of the train stuff getting re-brought over
yeah,
into my hobby.
yeah. I really like paper clay. I've started using paper clay like more and more. And also I'll use for, was it my wall ball? No, it was the radios. Here, I'll show you. Excuse all the scroll. Okay, wall ball. Yeah, this is my wall ball painting. 3 years ago, I think. So that's the paper clay for the knobs on the radios, and then the heavy gloss gel. I combined the heavy gloss gel with the light modeling paste and put that in the piping bag. So this painting had a lot of really great texture. I really enjoy using paper clay. I don't know. I just kind of play around.
That's fantastic. Um, I don't have any more questions, so I think this gives you
Okay.
Uh, I do want to say thank you for giving us that kind of trip through your before we cut out that you gave us that trip through your progression and sort of like your history, because I
Yeah.
mean it is fantastic to see how you've grown from a really, I mean you say your early art is not that good. It's still fantastic. It's just, but you're comparing it to your current art where you've had 30 extra or 15 extra years experience, or I'm
Yeah.
trying not to date anything.
I'm
I don't know the timeline specifically.
I'm 42. I started drawing and painting when I was like 12.
Ah,
So, I've had 30 years. But I would say, if I can make some closing remarks or advice. So I've had over, the years, I've had a lot of artists ask me how they should get started. And if art is something that you are actually wanting to like take seriously, I would say the very first place to start is to make a Facebook fan page. That it's free and it's easy. If you can run your Facebook page, you can make a Facebook fan page, and then you'll have one place where you can post and keep all the photos of your artwork. And then also Instagram. The algorithms tell us that we should post to Instagram at least once, if not 3 times a day, for optimization of the algorithm. And those are the two things I would recommend that any new artist start with. And then once you get a healthy body of work, and you feel like you have a style, so that perhaps a gallery owner or a curator could look at your body of work and see some cohesion. Which, can I just tell you from personal experience how much I loathed that the principle of cohesion. I was like, I won't be put in a box. How dare you try to put labels on me? But unfortunately, a lot of gallery workers desire consistency and desire for an artist to have a style. And that's something that I've really, really struggled with. But don't let it get you down. So once you're ready to make a website, I would highly recommend Wix. It's super easy. The interface is, they have, I don't even know how many templates. I mean, maybe hundreds of templates. It's just so easy. I built my website all by myself in only 3 days, and I know nothing about coding. I'm married to a software programmer, but the point is, I made my website by myself. You can do this, and you know, Google exists, YouTube exists. There is a video and an article for everything that you could possibly, want to accomplish. So, just believe in yourself, and keep creating. That's all. That's the biggest like words of wisdom is just keep creating. I think that's everything.
Yeah, I
That's it.
I think we're good. All right. Thank you so much, Alex, for joining in, giving us this talk today. I think it was super informative. I think everyone appreciated it very much. Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you to everyone who like tuned in live and everyone who plans to watch this in the future.
All right. Bye, Alex. Thank you.
Bye, Larissa. Bye, everyone.